We are ready, and if you want to do green lights on all your mics.
Test, test, test.
One,
Ryan,
two,
let's
three.
take roll.
Want to hit the green light?
Go Rams. What?
Mayor Godis,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wellman,
Here.
Councilor Cow.
Here.
Councilor Hershey.
Yes.
We have a quorum.
All right. Say the Pledge of Allegiance.
It's over there behind you. Sorry, we changed sides because that TV's in the way. Just
Focus.
just shift body.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Does this make it a liberal flag because it's on the left instead of the right?
It's on stage left, it's on the right.
Flag knows no colors. All right, agenda changes and conflicts. Seeing none, citizens appearing before council for items not appearing on the agenda. Okay, and I was asked to make a clarification last time that when I say, give my little spiel and say, if anybody wants, if it's on the agenda, don't worry, don't speak now because we'll take comment. And sometimes I don't because I don't see hands go up. So in the future, if people see hands either online or in the audience, I'll just kind of do this little disclaimer and say, just throw your hand up. And that way I won't miss people.
And can you just maybe announce, since everyone, we have a new audio visual system, so bear with us.
I think you just did.
Okay, great, thank you.
Is there a council comments? Go, Tony.
Ingrid asked me to say something about Bud Gardner. I don't see Matt here, but Bud was a city employee for a very long. You probably saw him around. He called himself the Turd Wrangler, Mr. Mayor. He would drive that giant truck that we have and work for the water department. He passed away about a week or 10 days ago. I did talk to Deborah, and they're going to do a bench or something for him. A lot of the city employees were asking if there's going to be a memorial service that's going to be in the spring, so I'll just keep everyone up to date. But he was, well, his father lives across the street from me and his brother Kenny. So very nice family, and did work for the city. I don't know how many years, Steve, but forever. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Anybody else? All right, can you have a motion for consent agenda? Charlie.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Been moved by Charlie, seconded by Shelley. All those in favor say aye.
Hi.
Motion carries 4-0. All right, next item is schedule council appointments.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I think I'd caused some problems. I would move, because my motion wasn't well stated, I would move that we meet on Friday, February 25th at noon by Zoom only, and vote on the election or the appointment of the replacement for Mr. Davis.
I'll second that.
So it's all gonna be.
It's all gonna be
right
electric,
here.
so electronic, so there's no one should come here for that.
Okay,
It's all online. If you want to join online, that would be the appropriate
if
time.
people want to watch.
Yeah. I think was a motion by you, seconded by me. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Financial Advisory Board appointments. Charlie, is this you?
Yep. There are several vacancies of the Financial Advisory Board, and we have, of course, Mr. Henny, who's applied to be reappointed to the board. I would move to reappoint Mr. Henny to his second term, expired in February 2025, and appoint Salvador Rico to the finance seat, term to expire February 23, and Asha John, and that is her name. I kept wanting to go backwards, but it's Asha John to city seat with the term expiring in February 2025.
I will second the motion.
Been moved by Charlie, seconded by Shelley.
When do we get to use the voting?
I mean, we can try. Yeah, I guess we want to just try that, right? It is, oh, sorry. it's
So
your
when
job.
does he decide?
No, no.
Is my question to close the voting.
And it's all-
So I can see when everybody has voted. I actually see the results first, not bragging, just bragging.
Yep.
Thank you.
Motion passes 4-0.
Nice job, Ryan.
And just a update, I received a note that there was another applicant and we were having trouble reaching out to that person. And we scheduled interviews, I think the next week or the week after, that we're going to interview that person, for bringing that back in the March meeting to fill that vacancy.
For the financial advisory board?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, next item, Transportation Commission appointments.
I thought we.
Okay. And I will handle this one because Ingrid Russo is the liaison and I'm the alternate, so, and she's not here. Ralph Trapani has been on the board for the last 3 years, actually since 2019. And we have a new resident, Dean Kinkle, who's a new applicant for the board. We have one regular seat open right now that expires in 2024, and then there's 2 regular seats that expire in March 2025. So what we would like to do is go ahead and appoint Ralph Trapani and Dean Kinkle to the regular seats on the Transportation Commission, beginning in March of 2022 and expiring in March of 2025.
Is that a motion?
That's my motion.
Okay, I'll second that. All those in favor, push a button.
There's nothing to push.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
That's so cool.
Thank you, Chris.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you, Alyssa, as well.
Yes.
Oh, thanks, Alyssa.
For all those people, all the hundreds of people out there who are watching this right now, I hope the audio is better for everybody, because I know that.
Can you hear better, Christian, than before?
A little louder.
A little
Really?
louder? Okay. Tell that guy next to you.
Probably the video is better.
We can hear Ryan really well.
But you couldn't hear me?
Thank you.
I how's the video?
How's the video?
Okay,
I'm gonna do HPC and I'm gonna really try not to mess it up. Mr.
okay.
Mayor.
Thank you.
Or Emery's gonna kill me. Literally. So, Mr. Mayor, as you know, there have been some complications with this, but I have clearly what I'm supposed to do. We're going to appoint Mr. Mayor, James Larson, to a regular seat with a term expiring April 2023, and this is my motion, effective immediately. Marion Ackerman will be appointed to a regular seat with a term expiring April 2023, effective immediately, and Grant Stevens to a regular seat beginning April 2022 with a term expiring April 2025. And that's partially because of the Haley thing, but that'll make everything clean.
Okay, I'll second the motion.
Thank you.
So moved by Tony, seconded by Shelley.
I think we should, just for the record, indicate the vote that was taken at the last meeting did not have the accurate terms and things or something. I think I screwed that one.
No, I think I might.
One of us did it anyway, but so that we're effectively replaced the vote of last meeting with the vote for this meeting, just so.
And again, it's the record's clear on Mr. Larson, Ms. Ackerman, and Mr. Stevens, right? Mr. Clerk, sir? Yes, it's clear.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank
all
you.
those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, next is Park and Rec Commission appointments. I don't think we have Ingrid here to.
I think I'm supposed to do that in her stead, so let me get that up. Yes, we did cover that for her. So we have one alternate seat expired in March 24 available. We have a vacancy coming up in March of 2025. We have several applicants, so I would move to appoint Christina Pearson, Laura Speck, and Tyler Benton to regular seats in the Park and Rec Commission. The terms beginning March of 2022, expiring March of 2025. And I think Laura is the only one. Take that back. Laura and Christine are second terms, but the Tyler Benton is first term.
Second?
Been moved by Councilwoman, seconded by Councilor Hershey. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0.
We're too far ahead of schedule, Mr. Mayor. Can you take a break?
Well, we might need to.
Awesome.
Is Kathleen here? I think we're gonna have to skip the South Midland update.
And go on to item 17.
Yeah,
Is she online?
Melissa, is she online?
Yeah, it's Meredith Carroll and Ryan Johnson.
okay, I'll promote them.
Mr. Bennett, can you show the participants so we can see who's in the audience?
If he clicks on participants, he can.
I can't, I don't think so. Oh, wait, maybe I can.
Well, I can, so they can see it.
Yeah, so we could see the names, who's there.
Well, if they have video,
That's great.
Yeah, put it right in the middle.
we,
But if you click attendees, Mr. Mayor, it'll tell you who's
Yeah.
there.
Right.
There we go. That's-
I'm sorry, I'm here.
okay, so
Hi.
just bear with us because it'd be great if we could all see you, but we can't. There you are. Hello.
Hi, how are you? My name is Meredith Carroll. I work at Project Resource Studio. You're used to seeing my colleague Kathleen Wanatovich, but while I'm new to this audience, I'm not new to this project. I've been working on the South Midland Public Information Team for over 7 months now, including attending project meetings and the job site. Am I able to share a PowerPoint presentation?
Yes,
I hope so.
if you hit share
Yes.
screen.
I'm hearing yes.
Okay. There we go. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. I'm happy to report out that the project is tracking along very well. We put out a video on Facebook recently that highlighted the tremendous progress made in 2021, as well as what is still yet to come in 2022. This is a long project. It's an 18-month-long project. We have come a long way, but it's also important to emphasize that to finish strong, we have to really focus on the critical remaining work. Good news, the South Midland Avenue Improvement Project in Glenwood Springs is on schedule for completion this summer. After a long and productive 2021 construction season, the project is currently on a planned and temporary pause for the winter, with no anticipated lane closures for a few more weeks. We're keeping our eye on the weather forecast because continued favorable conditions could allow us to resume work later this month or early next month. Once we have an official date for resuming work, we'll share out an announcement. Here's what remains before the project is finished. Improvements coming between now and July include work on the sidewalk, subbase, curb and gutter, wall work, asphalt extending from north of Cardiff Bridge Road to the 27th Street roundabout. We really appreciate everyone's continued patience. So far, by the numbers, as you can see, we have accomplished a lot, including 3,700 tons of asphalt. And I do want to note that there are still periodic potholes that pop up along South Midland, but our crews are out there identifying and patching them up. We've also had 90,000 square feet of wire cable, 17,000 feet of shotcrete walls for the roadway platform widening. We're well past the midway point on the project. Out of the total $13 million budget, approximately $9.5 million has been performed, with just about 25% left to go for work performed. The focus over the next 4 to 5 months before we finish is to really finish strong. Our subcontractors and partners have played an integral role in the success of the project to date. Same goes for all the community support we've received, especially from our Community Communications Coalition, with whom we continue meeting and staying in touch. We really could not do this without them. Minimizing impacts to residents and the traveling partners will remain a top project priority when work picks up again. When closures are in place, the contractor is expected to keep 2 lanes open during peak travel times for most of the project and provide advance notice for planned lane closures. We are still sending out updates. Anyone can sign up for updates. You can email us at southmidlandproject@gmail.com or call or text 970-618-5379 and we'll get you on the list. Does anyone have any questions? Ryan Johnson from engineering is here and somewhere, I think in the Zoom world, and can help answer any questions.
I'm here.
There you are, Ryan.
Can Ryan hear us, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Yep, I got you.
There he is.
Can I ask Ryan a question, Mr. Mayor? And I talked to Deborah briefly about this. I have some colleagues and friends who live up 4 Mile. And I don't know, what do we call it? The Cypress Elementary roundabout? Or what do you call that roundabout?
4 Mile roundabout.
The 4 Mile roundabout, that's a better name. They said like when we had all this big melt off that it got wet and froze and wet and froze. And she drives a Subaru and she's like, I was all over the road. Was that addressed or was there an issue or wasn't finished or?
Yeah, so the roundabout is, or it's nearly in its complete state. There's a few little minor touch-ups on the interior, and well, obviously the interior still needs to be done. But I think portion of what was causing some of that issue was a little bit of snow buildup in the curb and gutter itself. And then basically water was running along there and then jumping out of it. So I think a little bit more snow removal coordination with the county and the streets department will get that cleaned up, and probably a little bit more de-icer is needed as you approach, just because you're coming off the steep grade there.
Yeah, it's steep when you come down.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
And Ryan, while you're up, what party is responsible for the pothole repair? Is that the city or is that the contractor?
Generally speaking, the contractor will be responsible for that.
You tell the contractor to be responsible for that?
Yes.
Because I like the nostalgia of the man-eating potholes that we used to have 4 years ago before.
Right. Yeah. We'd like to not have to revisit that too much longer. So we are getting some crews out there tomorrow.
The potholes are really bad right now. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. With it.
They're not done.
Especially where there's this one section where the lanes condense down, there's a pinch point, and like you literally can't go around it if there's oncoming traffic. So cars have gotten back to where they will come to complete stop, wait for oncoming traffic to stop,
And go around.
and then go around. Mostly people in Priuses.
Who would
They
that be?
They get lost in those holes, don't they?
Well, it's not like any more damage can happen to those things.
Or to that Prius.
I'd just like to comment that it's really great to hear the project is on schedule and moving along. And I think when I've been through there, it's looking pretty good. So I'm glad to hear it's coming along and look forward to it when it's all done and seeing that sidewalk used.
Thank you.
And that railing looks amazing. It actually like
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
And the finished portions, when you can really see what it's going to look like, they are just fantastic. So
Yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out, and I was pretty happy to see that go up, and it does look great, I think.
Great,
Good work, Ryan.
nice, thank you.
Thank you.
thanks, Ryan. Thank you, Meredith, as well.
Thank you, Elle. Thank you.
All right. Next item is the Housing Coalition Letter of Intent.
Oh, it is that. Oh, we're in housing.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. I'm here this evening to present the Housing Coalition letter. The Greater Roaring Fork Valley Housing Coalition was a group that kind of came together and funded the 2018-2019.
Is your mic on?
Yeah, should be.
Oh, okay. I just don't hear it in the slide. No, it's fine. I can hear it just fine. I just didn't know if it would be picked up for the audience.
Yeah, so this mic is always on. It doesn't have to talk.
Okay. Sorry, continue. I apologize.
No worries. So the group that funded the 2018-2019 housing study that we reference a lot in various ways. And that group was, before the pandemic, working toward a memorandum of understanding about how to move forward to address those issues and the need that's identified in that study. And so after a pause, for the last couple of years as we've been dealing with the pandemic, the coalition group got back together. And obviously the need has only grown in the last few years. So members of the coalition have worked now on this letter of intent, which is kind of a replacement of the MOU. And the idea would be to form a nonprofit that would be able to access some of the ARPA funds that are coming down from the state, some of which will come in the form of a loan, which municipalities would not be able to necessarily access because of TABOR restrictions. So the idea is that this nonprofit could access some of those funds, and then also that there would be an ability to pull in some folks from the private sector into that nonprofit as members eventually. So what's before you tonight is the letter of intent. It's a one-time contribution of $10,000. It is in our budget. And the idea would be that this nonprofit would be stood up and that there would be a board of directors and that they would make some decisions. How exactly that the bylaws work and how that nonprofit works has not yet been identified. David Mylar, who has been part of this group for the whole time, is helping to get those bylaws in place, and the group stood up. So it's an effort that is in the Roaring Fork Valley and hopefully will extend to the entities in the Colorado River Valley as well. And in the meanwhile, the nonprofit piece that's part of the separate but kind of part of the effort that they do at the Garfield County Housing Authority, which is called the Uncle Bob Foundation. Uncle Bob Foundation would be basically holding those dollars until the nonprofit gets actually stood up. With that, I'm open to any questions you may have.
Go ahead, Shelley.
No,
We don't have a hand, but.
Just curious.
Yes, I want to.
Okay. Thanks, Jen. So we brought this up at the Housing Commission meeting on Wednesday, and there were a few questions that came up there. And then I have a couple questions for you, and they're not critical like of the group. I think overall, the concept of having a regional effort is very much supported. But there were questions on I think we may be the first city to be committing. So the question was on the $10,000 startup money. It wasn't, there was a question of whether that's really enough to do anything. And I understand that it's a startup, but if there's only the number of entities that were listed on the memo, it's really not even enough to fund one full-time staff. So, and it looks like that's not necessarily the intent, but if you're going to build a sustainable nonprofit and an organization, that was just one of the questions is what's the plan on that level of funding?
So we've had a lot of conversations. We have been meeting weekly with members of the coalition, but then also members of the municipalities and counties that have been working toward this roadmap process that I think I've mentioned a little bit before. So we have been meeting weekly, and I think that there are lots of questions about exactly how that will work. David Mylar said, we don't need this $10,000 necessarily to stand up this nonprofit, but the idea is that it's a contribution to that effort. And we do think that if there are specific projects that are identified through that roadmap process that the nonprofit wants to go after those state funds to pursue, that there may be an additional request to member jurisdictions, but hopefully that seed money will, could potentially be matched. I do know that there are lots of state dollars that are, generational money that will be available that, and we don't know exactly what those, if it's a grant, what that match piece will look like.
Okay, but is there an intent to develop kind of a funding stream that would make this a sustainable organization going forward?
I think that's the idea. And I think this is moving toward, taking that first step, moving toward this regional collaborative effort to address affordable housing, the needed housing. What exactly that ask looks like in the future, I don't think that has been ironed out.
Okay, You as staff have been part of this group and the roadmap group?
So Hannah and I have both been parts of, there's the two efforts kind of that are moving in tandem. The Regional Housing Coalition group that's been meeting all this while, and Hannah was part of that from the very, very beginning.
Okay,
And then this regional roadmap effort that is some technical assistance that came from the state. We were part of the application with Picken County to get those dollars. And so
Right.
then they've kind of come together. And I have been part of those from the very beginning. So Hannah and I have both been part of all those meetings.
okay. And you and Hannah are recommending, you feel like this is a good step for the city?
We think that it's a small contribution and it's a big effort. And, we think it can potentially have a huge impact if we can all work together on this issue, because lots of ways we function as, one big happy family, right? For the whole region. But we know that we have a shared work shed. We know that we have lots of folks who are traveling back and forth. And that's part of the reason why the roadmap effort identified housing as a need, in addition to some of those other things that are mental health and childcare, other kind of regional issues that we'd like to solve together. But yes, we think this is a good first step in the right direction.
Okay, great. Let's see, one more question. Has there been any talk about what mechanism would be used for representation, and how you make sure that the project spread and the funding spread throughout the region is kind of equitable with housing needs?
I don't think that we've had those kind of nitty gritty conversations yet.
Okay, great. All right, thanks.
Charlie?
I guess my question is you say 10,000 and you get down for formation and operation. Is this going to be staff position, or what's the money going to be used for?
I think it's more the contribution to saying, we have some skin in the game. We're going to get there. We don't necessarily think that it will go to, I think there were initially conversations to say, let's hire an executive director who can pull us all together. I think right now, all of the member jurisdictions are committed to being at those meetings and help with the decision making. David Mylard is giving his time. We have some other support from the folks who are in the roadmap process, and also the Aspen Institute has been at some of those meetings. So, it's more that we are all kind of committing our time to making it work. But it's more, I think, of an idea of skin in the game, and then potentially it could be match.
Grant match kind of thing.
Could be grant match.
Any other questions?
I would request an electronic vote on this, though. Not a roll, not a roll, call. Yeah, the traditional.
All right, is there a motion?
I can make the motion.
Hold on. Is there anybody from the public that would like to comment?
No.
Well, you're not the only person in the public anymore. There's attendees now. I'm sure.
I can Gary are talking.
Okay, well, unless Sandy Boyd wants to speak up.
Sarah.
I do, and I'd like to make a comment first. I know, this is kind of the initial steps to doing something we talked about for years, of working regionally together on housing. And I don't know, it kind of reminds me when we came together to form the Garfield Clean Energy back a while back. And it takes that initial commitment and that initial willingness to work together, and a little bit of a leap of faith, but it's good to kind of join in that coalition and work together on things like this. So I would like to make a motion that we approve the letter of intent and the expenditure of 10,000 from the general fund.
I'll second.
The motion by Shelley, seconded by Charlie. Ryan, let's call the question.
Just real quick
Yeah.
comment. I think the concept of regional housing authority, Jen, is good. And I'm glad you guys are working on this. I am concerned, as Shelley mentioned, I want to make sure that we get to the next level of things, that how we're going to expend that money, and that ties into traffic and other things that we often talk about. So, but I think this is a great start. And I appreciate all the time staff has put into this.
Okay, let's vote.
Motion carries 3-1.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jen.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks, Hannah.
All right, number 18, item 18, ordinance 2209, 2022-09. State's interest.
I'm sorry.
State's interest. We're on the next item.
Okay,
Oh, 18.
this is, I'm hoping that Richard is still online.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Okay, great.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Richard Peterson Creamer, Assistant City Attorney, Carp New Hanlon. The ordinance in front of you is relating to the regulation of matters of or areas and activities of statewide interest. For shorthand, I'm going to refer to this as the 1041 regulations or 1041 ordinance. That's because in the 70s, the General Assembly adopted a statute that was HB 1041 that authorized local governments to regulate in these particular discrete areas, kind of geographic zones, and then certain intensive activities that the General Assembly determined to be of statewide impact. Many of these types of activities have been kind of identified as impacting natural resources, environmental impacts, kind of large scale community impacts. There are activities of larger kind of industrial scale intensity. The statute itself kind of breaks out, as I said, discrete geographic areas that can be regulated. These are mineral resource areas, natural hazard areas, areas containing historical, natural and archaeological resources, and then areas around key facilities. And then there's activities of state interest that can be regulated. These are major new domestic water and sewage treatment systems, solid waste disposal sites, airport sites, rapid or mass transit terminals and stations, arterial highways and interchanges, major facilities of a public utility, development of new communities, utilization of municipal industrial water projects, nuclear detonations, and the use of geothermal resources. And so the statute authorizes local governments to regulate these areas and activities as long as you follow a specific procedure for adoption of those regulations. You'll see that this ordinance actually needs to have two public hearings, one for under the charter and then another under the statute. So that's why on second reading, there will be an additional public hearing for this ordinance. And the ordinance is kind of broken up into two pieces. One is the process for identification of the areas and activities that the city wishes to regulate. And then there's the actual identification of those areas and activities. And then there is also how the city proposes to regulate them moving forward. So what we've proposed here is, in terms of areas of state interest, it would be waterways, basically the Roaring Fork River, the Colorado River, 3 Mile Creek, Oasis Creek, and Mitchell Creek, from the ordinary high water mark out 35 feet. So basically tracking the riparian setbacks. The second area of state interest to be regulated, and this is authorized under the statute as well, would be Highway 6 and 24 and Highway 82. Because these are state highways, they're can have major impacts on the city's infrastructure, and so basically projects that could add a lot of additional traffic into intersections with these highways would fall under the 1041 regulations. And then the activities of state interest are construction of major new domestic water and sewage treatment systems or extensions thereof, construction of major facilities of a public utility, efficient utilization of municipal industrial water projects, and then rapid or mass transit terminal stations or fixed guideways. And so, once identified areas, we've kind of set some thresholds for how projects or proposals would be brought under the 1041 regulations. So, for example, if a project adds a kind of a de minimis amount of traffic to an intersection, it's not going to come under the regulations. But if you have to pull a CDOT access permit, that was kind of the threshold that we thought was reasonable. We tried to exempt projects that would generally already fall under, or at least come to city council for review. And trying not to add too much or really any additional burden to smaller housing projects, for example. The process itself would, could require for some of these projects that currently don't fall under any type of land use review, for example, from quasi-governmental or other governmental entities, could require some significant work to meet the application requirements. But none of these are unreasonable, and a lot of the entities that would be proposing them I think are relatively used to fulfilling many of these types of regulatory requirements. And as I said, this is not an anomaly around here. A lot of neighboring jurisdictions like Gypsum, Avon, Minturn, Silverthorne have all adopted them. Garfield County has 1041 regulations. Eagle, Pitkin, and Summit counties do, as well as many Front Range jurisdictions. So I think that is kind of a quick and dirty summary. We're happy to take questions. I see Carl is back, and he can field them in the room as well.
How does he know you're back? Oh, because he can see the whole room. Congratulations, by the way, Sam.
Is there any questions?
I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
You talked about the communities in this valley particularly. Don't most of the from Aspen to Rifle, what's sort of the percentage, or do you know? I mean, I think most communities are trying to take advantage of this, Carl, right? Or the ones you represent?
They do. The two major ones would be Pitkin County and Garfield County have both adopted 1041 regulations. I'm not sure if Basalt has or not. I don't think so. City of Aspen may have as well. So it's kind of one of those tools that you start putting in your toolbox.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Do you open, before you do, after her question, you open this for public hearing?
Yeah, it's the
again?
ordinance.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, Shel.
Okay, I just had a question from our work session earlier that I wanted to make sure we covered some of the things that we talked about, and that was, the one was to include the area of Highway 82 north all the way to the start of the highway.
Yes, absolutely. And I think probably if somebody is inclined after the public hearing to make a motion to approve, just include that as an amendment to it. There were a couple of other things we talked about that is going to take a little more nuanced work on my part, but that's a pretty easy one to get in on this reading, if you will.
Okay, and I don't
Did
remember
you say
what
that
those were,
would
so
do it
maybe-
this reading or the next reading on the non-Grand Avenue ones?
On the non-Grand Avenue, it's probably going to be on the next reading, just so I can give you specific language to
That's
look
fine.
at.
If there's no more questions, we'll open it up to public comment. Seeing none, I'll bring it back for a motion. For public comments. Go ahead, Charlie.
Mr. Mayor, I would move for the approval of ordinance 2022-09 with the suggested findings in the staff report. There are 5 of them, if I read that correctly, and also including that the area at Grand Avenue, Highway 82 starts at the beginning of Highway 82 and goes to the.
If I can pause, did you open for public? Okay, wow, sorry.
Okay, usually that's me. So
You're
thank you.
still with the.
I know, I'm sorry. It was,
No, he definitely did.
Yeah,
thank you, I apologize, Charlie.
That's fine, and so that the approval of the ordinance would also include 82 from where it starts in Glenwood Springs all the way to the south end of the town.
I'll second that. It didn't sound very conclusive.
That's because I was trying to remember what the hell's that. Okay. And just a comment, we talked about this in work session. And one of the things that Shelley raised, and I think it's important, is what Carl's going to look into just for the public, and that is the view sheds on the hills around us. Can we include those? Because it could become critical, as well as debris flow and things like that could become issues. And the staff has been directed to look at that before the second reading and the second public hearing. So.
Yeah, and I'll just comment real quick. I think just for the public, this is just another tool in our toolbox. I mean, it's been said, but before, but you have a whole toolbox of ways we can identify, and we're not trying to set a bar. We're trying to have a different review process. So as far as tools and toolboxes go, I think this is a good one. So Ryan, let's call the question.
So when Ryan calls a question now, there's not that roll call thing anymore, because Hershey.
Right.
No, and actually, I just got a text from the paper that asked that we read out what the vote was, because I isn't able to see the board, so he doesn't. Yeah, just to have the clerk read it out once the vote's gone up. Yeah.
I apologize, Ike. The one vote that was 3-1, the one no vote was Hershey.
And I think that's a great way to do it. If it's like
Whatever
whatever the
the
negative.
me, the one no.
You don't even need the.
I could just write Hershey no. And go
No, you could just do like a 6 to Hershey.
6 to Hershey. Yeah, do that.
But if you just want to say like the one dissenting vote, then
Do you mind calling out this one too?
Yeah, that's fine. Well, this one is
it's
unanimous.
4-0, unanimous.
Yeah, but they can't see the board.
They can't see the board on TV.
So I actually just made an adjustment, and I'm looking at that TV with this camera back here, or that.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Thank you.
Now.
I now see it.
The other two couldn't.
Okay,
Oh,
got
that's
perfect.
awesome.
Thank you. I'm just in the middle of it on text here.
Ike, does that work for you? It's like I'm speaking to God.
I'm sure it's fine.
Ike says
They'll figure it
fantastic.
out.
Yeah, it's good.
All right.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you for moving us along.
And Richard, thank you for your presentation, both here and in the work session. That was very helpful in my understanding.
All right, item number 19, ordinance 2022-06, adoption of the 2021 editions of building codes.
Is that Jen Uden?
I think it's the Jen show this evening.
Good evening again, Mayor, members of council. I know that we went over the presentation that I'm hopefully bringing up here slowly at a work session a few weeks ago, but we'll just quickly, hopefully. Lots of notifications here.
Should we get Alyssa to do your tech for you?
Maybe.
Or I could help, because Christian always thinks that I'm really good at this stuff.
I'm not seeing
We'll
the-
do tech support.
Thank you, Alyssa.
just because she came over. That's generally how it works. Alrighty. So this item is about the 2021 building code adoption. Essentially, we are adopting a new building code, or proposing to adopt a new building code to help keep people safe, and also to provide for the safety of first responders, and then to minimize long-term costs. So what are the major changes? Glenwood Springs is on the 2015 building codes, with the exception of the 2009 energy code, and the 2021 codes require blower door tests, automatic lighting, EV charging infrastructure, increased insulation requirements, mechanical systems commissioning. We're also proposing to adopt the tiny home and pool regulations, which we don't have in our code today. some of the reasons to do that, in addition to safety, is that there are, increased energy savings that will happen, especially with the energy code specifically. House Bill 1260 established a minimum building code, energy code. So if we do any of the adoptions, we have to come to, local jurisdictions have to adopt and enforce one of the 3 most recent versions of the International Energy Conservation Code. There are, of course, some costs that are associated with the change. So here are some examples that we got from local contractors. So that increasing the R value for wood frame roofs and framed walls will have some increases in costs. It's the case for fire sprinklers as well. So one of the things that we exempted from the last time we did the adoption is the requirement for fire sprinkler systems in 1 and 2 family dwelling units. And we are not suggesting that we exempt it this time. So there would be a requirement moving forward that a single family home or a duplex would be fire sprinklered. And so there are increased costs that are related to that, but the idea of having these fire sprinklers is specifically their life safety devices. And not only the livable spaces, so not the entirety of the space is not required to be fire sprinklered. It does require that an entire building be sprinklered. So as it relates to an accessory dwelling unit that is inside the footprint, a new ADU would not have to be fire sprinklered. An ADU that is separate and apart from that single family residential. So if it were in the backyard, that new ADU would have to be sprinklered. And I do think that Chief Tillotson is on, and I'm not sure if the fire marshal is on. But I did see that Gary was on earlier, so we can ask him some questions if you have any. We do already require fire sprinkler systems. If there's inadequate access that's not up to code, we do require fire sprinklers in some single family residentials already.
I'm sorry, would you say that again?
So we do require fire sprinkler systems in some, as somebody proposes a new
Apartment building.
a new single family residential, if the turnaround isn't adequate for fire apparatus, it's too far away from the fire plug, we do require those today. So we're keeping the bulk of the exemptions that we created with the adoption last time in the 2015 code. Again, that one change that we're looking at making is related to 1 and 2 family homes being required for automatic sprinklers, but it wouldn't require, if you're renovating the home, it would not require the addition of the fire sprinkler. Let's see, there are some other changes. Permit fees for pools, mechanical and plumbing permits would be based on valuation rather than a flat fee. And this would, we would also increase re-inspection fees to $100. So our understanding is that there are other communities in the Roaring Fork Valley that will also be updating to the 2021 code. And I think we may be one of the first. And our timeline for adoption, we're recommending that there be a 90-day delayed adoption after the second reading. And that's it. I'm open for any questions you may have.
How many day delay before the second?
So
90?
So generally it would
90
go
after. 90 after.
instead of the regular 10. So generally, you vote on second reading, and then after we publish it, so generally on the Monday, then it would be 10 days after that. And we're asking for 90 days after that, just to give time for contractors and folks who are trying to work their way through getting plans together, that they know that we're going to this 2021.
And Jen, it's my understanding the fire marshal is on, or he's listening as well.
Okay. And I know that he was thinking that if you had any questions about fire sprinklers, he would be able to answer them. And
The fire marshal could.
the fire marshal could, and
Mr. Pop.
that there was also, he was thinking that he might have an expert related to the fire sprinkler systems on as well. So I'm not sure if that's, I'm not certain, but happy to answer any questions that you have.
Good, Sean.
Okay. Jen, I did have a question on the sprinklers, and so my understanding is that if you, because we're, again, along with our housing, we're trying to encourage ADUs. So if someone does an ADU within their existing structure, they wouldn't have to sprinkle that, or?
That's my understanding
Is that
from
correct?
the fire marshal and the building official.
And then also if they remodel their house, they don't need to sprinkle.
They would not, yeah.
But if they build an ADU, say in the backyard or the side yard, or I don't know how it would apply, like a lot of times it's over an existing garage, say something like that, would they?
I think if it's, part of the structure, the fire marshal, they require the whole building to be sprinklered. So, one of the examples that I can think of is Clark Anderson's building that's over on Cooper,
Right.
that not everything was being renovated, but when that project came through, the entirety of the building had to be sprinklered. So what I'm saying is that in this case, because a renovation would not require that, if it's like part of the existing structure, popping the top, my understanding is that would not require.
Okay, but a separate building would. So my
But a
question comes
separate
in
building would.
to the water line, because typically my understanding is that fire suppression systems need a larger water line. And I think when we had the work session, I don't know, it was Victor or Gary talked about that it can be like a 1-inch line, but that's pretty much what they're using. But most existing homes, a lot of them might only have a 3/4 inch line. So if they do an ADU, I don't know if they typically come off the existing water line to the house, or if they have to dig a whole new service through the street to the water line. That's a huge added cost. And it could potentially be a large barrier to adding an ADU in one's yard. So I'm just wondering how that could work, and if there could be an exception to let them tap into the existing water line, or has that been thought about?
Or you could, for now, exempt accessory dwelling units. As you move forward, you may want to look at that. It's something that you could have just as an exemption.
Yeah, I think we might want to, we can probably pull together some information and come back, because I'd be shooting from the hip on changing what's in front of you tonight. There again, this is a first reading. Because I think I'd want to check in with Matt and the water department on what is really out there and how often we're running into that.
Right.
Because I don't want to create an exception for maybe what isn't as big a problem as we might think it is.
Yes, and I don't know how big of a problem it would be, but I hate to create a large cost barrier to ADUs.
Right. And obviously we have all kinds of programs to help with ADUs in terms of writing down system improvement fees and things like that as well.
Right.
So I think, like I said, I think I'd want to get a little bit more information so that we know how big of a potential issue that is, or if it is more of a 1 or 2 off over the course of 10 years.
Okay.
And just to that point, I'll say I had a home that I owned in Cardiff that had an ADU above the garage, and fires start a lot of the time in the garage because there's oily rags, there's cars, there's flammable liquids. Like more often than not. So I think when we're talking about this, like maybe not all ADUs are created equal, because an ADU in your backyard, kind of a patio home, not above
Right.
gas and lawnmowers and flammable things, might be different than what I had.
And one
Yeah.
over. And
Which-
they do require, it would require like an hour fire separation between that typically.
Thanks, Charlie.
So Carl, a question that you said something and it triggered a question in my mind. If I want to put an ADU unit in the back of my house, over the garage, and I got a sprinkler. And let's say I think I have 3/4 inch service line coming to my house, and I needed a 1-inch line to do that. Would I have to pay system improvement fees on top of that?
The system improvement fees aren't calculated on tap size for us. The system improvement fees are not calculated on the size of the line like they are in some communities. They're calculated on the use. So the EQR calculation for the ADU is the same, whether it's a 1-inch line or a 3/4 or a 2-inch line.
And I
But-
think it's a quarter of a
Yeah.
single family home, right?
But I have a new use because now putting new water in my.
Right, no, it would, there are two separate questions. What the system improvement fee is based on the use, so that calculated EQR, regardless of the line size, that's one question. The other one is the current line size you have sufficient to support the ADU or sufficient to support the ADU in a sprinkler system, which is a physical capacity issue, separate and apart from the system improvement fee.
Yeah, so my question is, let's say I gotta go to a 1-inch line.
Right.
Do I
And that's what I'm saying. You don't pay more. You would pay the same as if you were on the 3/4 for the system improvement fee.
So I'm just, and I think I heard you, but I want to make
Right.
sure I understand it. Do I have to pay do I have to pay a tap fee because I'm not putting a 1-inch tap instead of a 3/4 tap?
Well, actually, funny story that we can talk about over a beer about Lee Leavenworth and I. The only time I've ever had a mutual mistake of contract was with Lee over this issue. In our code, a tap fee is literally the cost of attaching to the pipe, which is a few $100s.
Okay.
And then there's a system improvement fee, which is related to the system improvement impact fee for the use that you're adding to the system.
Right. And the system improvement fee usually is water use unit. So if I'm gonna add another sink or another toilet, I have to pay more.
Well, and that's what Shelley was just saying is that on an ADU, I think it's a 0.25 is what it's calculated on an EQR. So that's, you pay the 0.25 of whatever the system improvement fee is at the time.
But that has nothing to do with the sprinkler, you know.
That has nothing to do with the sprinkler or
That's
the
what I'm
lines.
trying to get to. Okay, thank you. Sorry. Having been dead for a minute, so thank you.
I had another question. So I'm really happy to hear about the tiny homes. Are we doing any adjustment on like tiny homes allowed, like tiny lots to go with the tiny homes? You hear what I'm saying?
I don't know that we've had that level of discussion yet.
Okay, 'cause we have some minimum lot sizes that can be a little restrictive. So just thinking about.
And I know that there are at least a few developers who've asked us some questions about kind of the tiny home or, tiny homes and separately kind of like micro apartments. We've had various conversations, but this is really just specific to including the regulations that are associated with the building code.
Okay.
So not necessarily anything on the planning side.
That would require a zoning change, wouldn't it? Because
Yeah.
you're changing
It would
lots
be
of-
some other changes. So my last question is the 90 days. So we had some larger projects approved through planning. And I guess my concern is that if those come in with building code, then they're being built under the old codes. And if we have 90 days, it's a lot of time. So, and I know we've been talking about this code adoption for a couple of years, a lot has been going on and happening, but it's, I'm a little bit hesitant to give it that long, and I understand. some of the reasons.
Yeah, what I was going to say is that oftentimes they're building to the most recent code anyway, because that's what the architect's system is set up to spit out on those really large projects. And a
Right.
lot of the things, I can't think of how much has changed on commercial, but not that much really.
Well, I mean, I think that there are obviously those insulation requirements. So,
Mhm.
certainly there are, I think the building official talked about the roofs in particular.
Right.
I thought Hannah might be able to answer the question of how many things are coming that are kind of teed up to come through for a building permit,
Mhm.
or either working toward their at the end of their final plans.
Okay.
Like a unit count? Is that what
Yes.
we're going for?
Kinda, right.
I would say we've got a handful of larger projects, maybe on the 4 or 5 that are in between. So we're either reviewing their building permit now or just entering final plans. And then probably another handful on the smaller side. So 10.
Yeah, and what I would,
Projects.
Like hundreds of units or?
probably the,
No, not hundreds of units,
Not hundreds.
a little bit smaller than that, but we have 40 there, 40 there, 17 there.
Yeah.
5 there.
What I would say is just because I was just on the phone with probably the largest project you're thinking about is BLD. They're still in the process of getting to final plan. They'll be building underneath this code. There's no question, because they're just not going to be the new code. Right. I'm sorry, underneath the new code. And I think the other handful, they're either already submitted for permit or they're far enough out, they probably will be underneath the new code.
Yes, and we've been communicating with staff with people who are expecting, we have a final plans for a residential project that should be turned in here within a week. We've let them know of the approximate timeline for this, so it's likely that they're already submitting with that code in mind.
I guess my question is why we have to wait 90 days, so there's no practice there.
Because every small builder who builds under 10 units is going to come in here and remind you the impact you just had on them because they just went to CDs and spent all that money and now they have to go back and redo CDs.
You answered my question.
I'm just wondering if 60 days would be enough.
I don't
really feel like.
I'll be really honest. I think those big projects are going to come in underneath the new code. I think 90 days is fair for the smaller builders. And I guarantee you, even at 90 days, you're going to hear about it tomorrow.
But I would, yes, I think a lot of them also, if they're building throughout the valley, a lot of them are already building to the 2018 code or the.
Right. I think a lot of it has to do with where they're at in those CD sets.
Other questions? All right, it's public, it's an ordinance, so we're going to open it up to public hearing. Anybody from the public like to comment on this item?
Anybody online?
I'm looking, I don't see anybody.
My mic was off. Thanks, Ryan.
All right, see nobody in this public or on the virtual public that has their hand up. I'll bring it back to council for further discussion and or a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I would make a motion to approve ordinance 2022-06 on first reading, adoption of the 2021 editions of the building codes. Were there any other additions, Mr. City Attorney? No.
The
Thank you.
energy code, I believe.
Did I say?
It's all,
Building code.
that's.
Yeah,
Okay,
building
okay.
additions of building code
A
under
second.
the end. Thank
I'll
you,
second
Shelley.
that. Thank you.
It's moved by Councilor Hershey, seconded by Councilor Cow. Ryan, let's call the question.
This is so cool.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you.
Meaning everyone voted
Thanks,
yes.
Jen.
Victor, and everybody else.
All right. Item number 20, ordinance 2022-04 code amendment to wireless communication facilities standards.
I lost this.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council.
Good evening, Jen. It's wonderful to see you this evening.
I'm here to present planning item 5721, part 3. We ended up not being able to bring all of the code amendments through at one time, so we'll try not to do that to you again too much. So this is ordinance 2022-03. It amends the code to reflect updates in both state law and federal regulation related to wireless communication facilities. These slides are very brief. The proposed amendments incorporate changes that include additional definitions, co-location requirements, some aesthetic impact mitigation, distance standards, timelines for city review, and limiting small cells in the public right of way to a height of 25 feet or no more than 5 feet taller than any existing utility pole or a traffic signal within 500 feet. And that is lowering from what it is currently in the code, which is 35 feet. Changes to Title 70 require that the council consider whether and to what extent the proposed code changes are consistent with the comprehensive plan and other city policies, that they do not conflict with other provisions of the code or the Glenwood Springs Municipal Code, that they're necessary to address a demonstrated community need, necessary to respond to substantial changes in conditions or policy, and are consistent with the general purpose and intent of this code. And that's all I have. If you have more specific questions, hopefully Carl or Richard or I'll be able to answer them.
So I assume, Carl, this is such a fast moving thing that these changes continue to happen.
They continue to evolve. They really do. I mean, I think between the first of the year and now, we've had two different sets of rulemakings coming out of the FCC. So you're going to see revisions to these on a consistent basis. Probably the most, the place where we have heard the most from industry is a 25-foot limit in the public right of way. And that was a number that staff, particularly Public Works, was comfortable with. You may hear from the industry that they just simply can't operate at that height, that they need them to be 35 or 40 or whatever they want. I think they need to be able to demonstrate that they can't function at 25 when they make an application. So like I said, it's one that Public Works is comfortable with and I think is appropriate aesthetically here in town.
Other questions? All right, it's an ordinance. We'll open this up for public comment. Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council for a motion and a further conversation. Councilor Wilman.
I move for the approval of ordinance 22-04, put amendments to wireless communication facilities with the 5 findings set forth in the staff report.
I'll second.
I was waiting for you.
I was just seeing how uncomfortable long that silence would be. It's been moved by Councilor Wilman, seconded by myself. Ryan's blinking lights are up, so please push them.
It's unanimous.
Thank you, Jen. Again. Are we going to see you for the next one? Item 21, ordinance 2022-07, public arts funding planning item. Oh, is this a team?
So, Ms. Uden, am I correct that we have told the Arts Council not to be here tonight?
We did. I think earlier in the day, there was some conversation about wanting to have this conversation happen with more of the rest of the city council board present. We did communicate with the Arts and Culture Board that you would be moving this item.
Well, I would ask the council or Shelley and Charlie, when do you think we should move this to? And I see Charlie's looking at the calendar, so I will defer to him.
Well, we did discuss this at the Arts and Culture Board meeting. They're very excited about the art plan. And I think it's only been before this board one time before, and it'd be great to have a full council to consider the funding for the arts plan. So we have a meeting with that board scheduled for May 5th, I believe. So I would request that we reschedule this for that same date.
Well, is there a reason why we couldn't have the first? Is there a reason?
First reading of it?
Just next week or the next meeting? We will have a.
We could, because it is risk that the work session might move, as they do over time. So
Why don't we schedule it for first reading at the next meeting when you're going to have a full council? If it passes on first reading, then maybe you delay the second reading until your work session or
That's
something.
okay to delay it till-
Yeah, absolutely.
okay. Does that work for your noticing? And
That's just fine. As if you say when the date is, we wouldn't have to renotice it. So that's
You're gonna
okay.
drive that poor woman off the post.
I'll
crazy.
make a motion to continue item number 21 for first reading until the March 3rd.
Yeah.
meeting.
Second.
Been moved by myself, seconded by
With
Councilor
only 4
Hershey.
people, it's hard. There's always
Right.
like a lot of drama.
I know.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion
Thank you,
carries
Jen, and thank you for being in
unanimously.
contact with the Arts
The
Council.
buttons are
Thank
blinking
you.
for no reason, right?
It's not that.
Jen, thank you very much.
Fax machines. Item number 22, ordinance 08, series 2022, in order to the city council, of the city of Glenwood Springs to amend the 2022 budget appropriations.
Thank you. I can take that one, I think. When we submit a budget every year, it's in the first week of October for the following year. And then we try not to make changes to that budget so the goalposts aren't moving on council after we've presented stuff. And inevitably, every year, there are some things that we just don't quite get over the goal line, and we need to carry them forward to next year. There are things that come up that council asks us to do that aren't in the budget for the following year. Sometimes we get grants like we did for the airport. So this ordinance just formally appropriates those dollars into the 2022 budget. I don't think there's anything in here that I can remember that we haven't talked about. I'm happy to take any questions anybody has, and we're doing it a little bit early this year. Usually we'll wait till the first quarter, but yes, sir.
If I vote for this ordinance, will I have financial reports by the end of the first quarter?
So on what I thought we would do is get you guys a summary of how and where we think we're going to land in 2021. And I'll give you guys a little bit of write-up. I'd like to push our enterprise funds back a little bit, but the rest of it, I think I can get out next week.
That was somewhat tongue in cheek, Mr. Boyd, but I
No.
really would like to know when I'm going to have my financial.
Tuesday.
Just-
I need to meet with Yvette and Deborah to make sure that I'm not crazy on a couple of things. And then I'll need the weekend, but I think on Tuesday we can get at least the 2021 stuff out.
No,
You
I
don't need
mean,
the weekend.
No, we're pretty much ready to go as long as they don't tell me I'm crazy.
we had
somewhere.
that discussion of the financial advisory board. So whether I knew it was a softball.
Right. Well, and that's why we pulled this up a little bit, because there are a number of things in here that we're carrying. So it'd be really nice to start, when we start pushing out that financial reporting to go against a revised budget.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions?
Just a clarification that a lot of these things like the capital projects fund and things like that, those were appropriated in 2021. They're just being rolled over.
Yeah, so it's broken into three different categories. The top category are things that we actually appropriated in 2021 and are just getting rolled over. Most of them had purchase orders and then we just didn't quite get it finished. The second group are things that weren't really in the 2021 budget, but we're trying to include in the 2022 budget.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Thank
none?
you, Steve, for doing this.
Yeah.
Mhm.
End of that.
No, just Steve.
It's an ordinance. We're gonna open this up to public comment. Would anybody from the public like to comment? Okay, seeing none, either virtually or in person, we'll bring it back for a motion.
Your honor, Mayor, I would move to approve ordinance 22-08 on first reading only, which is the approval, the budget amendment number 1 for fiscal year or the calendar year 2021. 22. Thank you.
A second motion.
It's moved by Counselor Willman, seconded by Counselor Cup. All those in favor say aye.
Ordinance.
For voting.
I think we need to vote.
Yeah, you're using it all the time now.
Is that charter or code that we can't do a voice vote on an ordinance?
Well,
I'm asking seriously.
no, seriously, it just says that your votes have to be recorded, so the clerk has to do it one way or the other. Say it's unanimous, say it's 5-1 if you all say aye or whatnot.
But when I do voice for like stuff we don't really care about, and I say all those in favor say aye, and we all say aye, doesn't that carry the same weight as actually punching the button?
It does, it's just occasionally you guys don't all vote.
Right.
So if you just
And
leave it
so the
blank,
clerk has to figure it
that's
out.
not
I
abstaining,
think
it would
with
be
the new
not
system,
voting.
just use the new system.
Right.
If you didn't touch anything.
Right.
Okay. But you have.
Motion carries unanimous.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Steve.
Can we take a quick break?
I'd like to take an hour and a half break, so we don't finish before 9. Oh, wait a minute, we gotta finish before 8 because then Hamlin's on
Yeah,
tap.
so there's pro-rata calculation done based on the number of council members present. So essentially it's a 1 hour per council member to get our 2-hour cutoff.
That,
I think you're amending the rules in midstream, Mr. Hamlin.
what did George Bush call that? The fuzzy math or the fuzzy
Yeah.
math? Something about
Funny.
anything from our city manager, acting city manager, Steve?
Nope, I will tell you, I talked to Deborah a little while ago and it sounds like she had a good day today. So I think her absence was well spent. So
It usually is.
So is the speed with which you did this because Deborah's not here? Is that what we should tell her?
No.
She'd be happy.
Shows up for shop again.
I was gonna say, it could be too, because I missed the first 45 minutes.
Yeah, that's true.
Following up on the on Steve's report, I will say that absence of mind for the first 45 minutes of the meeting. I did have an opportunity to see Governor Polis when he was here in town, conveyed to him that you guys would love to have been there, but you were tied up on quorum issues in council chambers doing the public's business. He wanted me to convey his regards to you and his always love and enjoyment stopping in Glenwood Springs.
But he didn't want to come and visit our meeting?
You know, I think he would have, but he's trying to do a bunch of stops over 2 days. And so I think he actually had to get back. I don't know if it was to.
But you told him we were otherwise engaged.
I did tell him you were otherwise engaged and would otherwise be there. So, and he really did. He has I think it's clear he has a warm spot for Glenwood. And so he was excited to be here.
City Attorney?
That was it.
Oh, that was it.
I was talking.
So I would
don't
like
know.
to give Steve a raise because the meeting he ran is.
It's a miracle.
I'll second the motion if you want.
We do have, before we get all.
Correspondence.
We do have corresponding. There's 2 items. The first item is a letter to the ITMRP, the Intermountain Transportation Regional Niner. This is a group that our region is a 5-county region: Lake, Pitkin, Garfield, Eagle. There's one I'm missing there. Anyway, this is a group that helps set Spinning Prairies as a 10-year plan that Southbridge was on at one point in 2019. We were at that point the 4th highest rated in the whole region for projects, and there's a laundry list, everything from Entrance to Aspen to Highway 24 in Leadville, like big state projects. If it's not a state highway or an interstate, interstates are state highways, obviously, then it doesn't, just not applicable. So each county submits, and then we had it listed out, and in the top 10, we were number 4. Somehow out of that list, we did not end up being selected as on the fiscally constrained part. I'm getting kind of geeky here, but we didn't get in the 10-year plan. And so we think this was an oversight. The larger committee obviously feel that this is an oversight. So we are sent that this letter is being crafted to basically say, hey guys, can we re-examine this and make sure that we're on that list? Because the importance of being on that list is I really can't overstate that when it comes to state funding and being able to have a foot in the door for our Southbridge project. Anybody want to add anything to that explanation?
I agree with you, and I was on this group for a short while, and then Ingrid took over and we did some changing of that. But I think it's very important to the funding, and it's an interesting mix of people. The meeting I did attend, it's interesting. I was gone last Friday, but yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
I totally agree with it, and all of my past involvement on Southbridge from mainly years ago, but it's always been a high priority for CDOT also to have that intersection and revamp that section of Highway 82 south of town there, because that section in the modeling and predictions of the highway as it goes forward, that's a very constrained section, and it reaches failure levels at some of the stoplights and things. So it's an important project to CDOT also, and it was actually, as mentioned in the letter, it was analyzed as Southbridge being there when we went through the traffic modeling for Grand Avenue Bridge. So it's an important project, and how it was left off the 10-year plan, do not understand. So I think the letter's appropriate.
And we do need consistency in the voice of saying we need Region 3 to be telling the larger CDOT community that this is a high priority in Region 3. We need the IT and PR to say this is one of the top priorities, if not the top priority of all of our region. We need to be banging the drum, which we're doing as loud as we can. And we need the state and CDOT to be advocating for projects like this on a federal level for this funds coming down. So this is the last piece really of the last kind of missing piece that's just kind of odd. And so this letter is meant to correct that. So if it's okay with everybody to send this, does anybody have an objection if we send this?
I would like to actually, and then just brief, I'll talk about the first one's a DOLA grant for the broadband system, and I think that's also very important. So I would move that we approve the mayor to send both of these letters as a formal motion to council.
Why is there two?
I'll second.
Wait, why is there
Two separate issues. One is on the
Bridge.
grant and one is on.
Oh, okay, but you have to send two letters, okay.
Yeah. Two different things, but just get them both put in one motion.
You made the motion. Who's the second?
Second.
Okay, motion by Councilwoman, second by Councilor Cop.
Oh, I was gonna vote, or we're gonna do it. this
Yeah,
way?
I think you're gonna always vote on the machine.
Oh, okay, great. That sounds exciting. I'm
Really?
ready.
Do we have to on just,
It's fine with me.
all those in favor say aye.
Yeah, it's fine. I just,
Aye.
Aye.
I'll get used to it.
I'm just gonna say, I think if it's not controversial, we don't think it's controversial, and if somebody feels like it might be controversial, just speak up.
Well,
and
but
say-
I think it's important for the newspaper to record like a no
Yes,
vote.
absolutely. And so I think Tony,
So
or
if I said no, I did, but if I did,
I think just for points of interest, if there's something that is controversial or someone thinks that they're like, I would like this, please just request it and I will.
but I think on ordinances, whether it's required or not,
Yeah,
we
yeah,
should vote.
Yeah, we should.
And
Okay.
I agree with you, Jonathan. If somebody wants a recorded vote, they should only ask it. It ought to be automatic that it happens. So
So Jonathan, right now, we are doing minutes a different way, but coming up, depending on what you guys decide, this records the votes that we do and it prints it off for later on. So it might be more useful to have done by electronics.
Is it more useful for you?
What?
Would you prefer that?
Not right now, but later on, depending on what you guys decide on the minutes, then yes, by electronic will probably be more useful.
remind us of that, okay? Ryan?
Yeah, because we're gonna, like, there'll be times where like consent agenda, we just use voice vote, like, we won't be doing that anymore.
But it sounds like it might help Ryan.
That's fine. No, that's a totally different story.
And I asked the CML letter be put in, not for any reason, but to let you know, this is something that's going on at a statewide level, and I just want you to be aware of it. I intended to get it sent out, and I think I screwed up in how I presented it, and so doesn't really need, but it's more informational, but trying to keep you advised of major things going on with respect to the CML.
Yeah.
So,
Anything else for the good of the order?
Move to adjourn.
second.
The motion by Tony, seconded by Charlie.
Do we
Ryan?
vote on it?
See how awkward this is? Oh.
That wasn't bad.
Shelley? You need to press a button for us to leave.
See how it shows up.
Yeah.
Ike, the vote is 3, Tony.
I have nothing to do. So.
All right.
To say. Jeez. Thank you, Ryan. Thanks. Miracle.